which is often missed. Planck's constant is called the quantum of action. Now, what is action? Action's a word which we don't meet in school, but we should do. We come across things like mass, distance, time. Velocity is mass time, length divided by time. Underneath are just the units. This is how mathematicians look at it. So velocity is length divided by time. Momentum is mass times velocity. So you get it's mass times length over time. And those of you who did a little bit of maths or mechanics at school will remember all this stuff. Action is just another one of these qualities. It's actually mass times length squared over time, which you can get it two ways. It's either, if you look at it, it's momentum times distance traveled, or it's energy times the time the energy is operating. That's action. But we don't normally meet it at school, except in some very fundamental principles. You've probably heard the principle of least action. It's actually a very important principle. It says in any process, nature always does it in a way that the amount of action used is a minimum. The golden principle in physics. Everything goes by this principle of how do you keep action to an absolute minimum. So action turns out to be more fundamental. And Planck's constant, the quantum of action, it's called Planck's constant, and here it is. For those of you who love zeros, very, very small, but it's not energy. Energy is erg. This is erg seconds. It's not actually energy. So every single photon of light is an identical unit of action. So whatever the underlying field is, the unified field, the field of consciousness, whatever it is, it seems the first manifestation is actually action. So manifestation is action, is activity, which then begins to appear as mass and energy related again by, we talk about the speed of light, E equals mc squared, and we think, what is the speed of light doing relating energy and mass? If you take c to be the ratio of manifestation of space and time, then it makes much more sense that energy and mass are related by the ratio of manifestation of space and time. So we're nearly there. By the way, there's another connection here between light and consciousness. Light has no space, doesn't know time, doesn't know mass. Consciousness isn't in the material world. It isn't something with mass. More matter appears in the mind. But also, if you look at the mystical experience, the experience of pure consciousness, when all those forms in the mind that stir the mind up, the Yoga Sutras, the first line of the Yoga Sutras, say yoga, that mystical state is the stilling of mind stuff, the stilling of all that whirling of chitta, of all those forms. When that stills down, you arrive at a state of consciousness in which time drops out. It is boundless. There's no sense of spatial boundaries. There's no matter. So pure consciousness that the mystics experience is just like light. So where we seem to be going with this, the normal view of what happens with light is something like that. A photon goes from the point of emission to the point of absorption. From light's point of view, space and time are so warped that the point of emission, the point of absorption are coincident. And the photon is an exchange of action between 2 points. It's an interaction between 2 points which are, from its point of view, coincidence. There isn't a transmission across space and time. Space and time collapse. There is the exchange of an action. From light's point of view, from our point of view, it's different. From our point of view, it seems to cross space and time. And so we say, well, if light got from here to there, how did it get there? It must have traveled somehow. Did it travel as a wave, or did it travel as a particle? Sometimes we look at it, it travels as a wave. Sometimes we look at it, it travels as a particle. That's because we have stretched out the zero interval into space and time and then try to answer the question from that frame of reference. if you look at it from light's frame of reference, and I think the only real way to look at light is from light's own point of view, not from our material point of view, it doesn't need to be a wave or a particle because it doesn't go anywhere. So where we're getting to is sensory forms are in the mind. Color, shape, sound, matter is a construct in the mind. Space and time are part of the framework within which the mind interprets its experience. Wave and particle are just models of the mind. It comes back to what Whitehead said. These are just qualities in the mind which we mistakenly assume apply to the external world. They don't. Out there we just have perturbations in the absolute, which consciousness congeals into this material world we see and then believe in. The same is true, I think, also of causality. Causality is a construct in the mind, something else that Kant was playing with. And again, Jung looked into this. We think in a causal way, but that doesn't mean the external world has to behave in a causal way. And we think in terms of locality. And what we're now discovering is, what physics is finding out, is the actual world out there is a non-local world. It's very, very, very weird, as Fred was pointing out, very, very weird. It's only weird when we insist on thinking that the way we experience it is the way it is. And in between the two, we have light. Light isn't part of the physical world, it seems. It isn't part of the world of space-time matter. It seems to be the first manifestation of the absolute, whether in the external world or within our minds, is light. Again, in the mystical experience, those deep levels of consciousness, light comes up a lot. People talk about light, the light of consciousness, the inner light, the divine light, seeing the light. So this turns the whole hard question inside out, as well as your minds. The hard question is not how does insentient matter ever give rise to experience? How does consciousness manifest into all these diverse forms? Consciousness is fundamental. You answer this question, however, not through theory or mathematics or science. You do it by experiment, but the experiment is in the mind. And this is what the mystics have done. And the conclusions of these experiments come out statements like this. Here's Muktananda: Earth, moon, stars, and sun revolve inside me. Which, to your average materialistic scientist is obviously a load of complete, absolute, I was going to say an English word, but I won't, rubbish. This is obviously the result of a mind deranged by too much meditation. But this isn't just unique to Muktananda. You find this again and again and again in mystical teachings. The world is inside me. We have this experience of the world in our mind, and then we think we are in the middle of it. It's not. It's all within us. So what the mystic is doing is experiencing this happening. They are quietening the mind down, letting go of their attachment to the story. And so instead of watching the movie and thinking it's real, they're seeing, oh, that's interesting, that play of light. It's all just the light of the projector moving around on the screen. It's all just happening in the light. Which brings us back to the age-old question which Fred touched upon. What do we mean by I? Who am I? What is the self?